Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today for part one of our Cube Report series for Data Blocks in Focus. I'm your moderator, Chris Conley, and I'm joined by Ria, our eMite extraordinaire and series facilitator, as well as Tyrell, our North American Senior Solutions Consultant, as you can see by all our pretty faces here. So if you have any questions during the webinar, please just type them in at any time in the Q&A section. And at the end, there'll be a lot of time for us to answer as many as we can. So without further ado, Ria, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Chris, for that introduction. And again, welcome to the launch of Datablock in Focus. And it's such a pleasure to have everybody in today's webinar. I'm very excited to share with you today everything about Cube Reports. So to get things started, let me just share with you some of my slides. So today we are starting the series with the part one of Cube Reports, or the basics that we would cover today: how to create Cube Reports from scratch and how to set the basic aesthetic settings that Cube Report has. So all of those you would see in a bit. And then for tomorrow, for tomorrow we have the boost session, or the intermediate session, wherein you would see advanced Cube Report visualizations. So that's very exciting, and I hope you get to join us again tomorrow, same time. And there's a third installment of the series, which would be coming soon and to be scheduled. And rest assured, you will get a blast from our team when this advanced session or webinar would be scheduled. All right. So in the next half hours or so, this would be what we would cover. So how to start with the cube, how to create a cube report from scratch, as well as how to take advantage of the report sets that we have as well as you create a cube report. So later on, you will see how the cube report sets would work. And then you would also learn what's inside a cube. What are the different parts of the cube, the measure, y, x-axis, filter, and options. So all of those things you would learn later on. And we will also touch on some tips and tricks on how we would design the cube. So pretty excited about that. And as well as the different chart types that we have available for cube reports. So as you can see, we have a lot of different options made available for you, but we would cover the simple chart types today. So those are the ones that we would see later on. So we have the line, area, pie, donut. All right, and we'll also cover some best practices that we have when it comes to working with cube reports, so that you'd have a better eMite journey and you would be able to see how eMite would best address your reporting needs. So I'll go ahead and just quickly and share my slide, and let's get into eMite itself. So as you can see, I have a blank eMite page right here. So let's go ahead and create a cube report from scratch. So under edit page, or whether you would want to create a brand new page, you can just click on the plus sign over here. But since I have a ready page right now, let me just go under edit page and click on add content. So it would give you this option, like how many data blocks you want to add to your page. So let's just start with one. As I click on add here, you would get to the whole menu of different data blocks we have available. But of course, we will just focus on cube reports for today. So as you can see, when I clicked on cube report, you would automatically get this drop down menus. So this is the report set that I was referring to earlier. So report set basically would just allow you to put all of your reports in one folder. So I have my own folder here. Let me go ahead and look for that. Oops, sorry, let me do that again and scroll down. Here's the folder I have, RDJ training. And I can go ahead and create a brand new report or select from the previous reports that I've already created. But for now, let's go ahead and create a cube report from scratch. And you can also just put in the title of the data block or the cube report right here from the get-go, and as well as choose the color of the header itself. But let's just go ahead and have this by default. I'll rename the data block or the cube report later on, and we'll just have it in light blue. I click on add, and you will get into the cube right away. So as I've mentioned earlier, let me just make this bigger for everybody. So these are the different parts of the cube. By default, it would get you to measures. So this is where you would have to select the index where you would get the data from. So say I would want to create a cube report on grade of service. Let me get to Q history for that. That's the index I need. And then these are all out of the box, so you can just go ahead and select this as you select the right index for your cube report. And I mentioned grade of service. Let me just go ahead and click on that. And if I click on preview right here, you will just get one big solid bar, right? And it doesn't really make any sense. So if I want to see the grade of service for the different groups that we have in the contact center, then I would have to go to the x-axis over here. In parentheses, it says category. So let me go ahead and select Q name for that. So as I select and put a check mark under Q name and hit on preview, then you would see all the different Q names and their grade of service. Let me just quickly go back here as I did not put a name for this cube report. Let's say it's grade of service. And I'm saving it in my report set or my folder or DJ training. So let me go ahead and save and exit. And I have my cube report here, right? Now let's just go back to the cube one more time by clicking on edit report or the pencil icon over here. So you know what measures are, and we also just selected a category or the x-axis for your cube report. Y-axis will be covered for tomorrow's session, so we'll keep a simple cube report for today. Now, filter over here is just another way to filter and slice and dice your data. So say you just want to filter your report or your x-axis here for particular Q names, then this is where you can do it as well. So I won't do that for now, but just showing you what the filter portion looks like and what it's for. And then this is actually my favorite part of the cube because it can do so much for your cube report. So options, when you click on options, and as you can see, you have all the Q names in your x-axis right here. This is another way of efficiently sorting and making sense out of your cube report. So this is where you can sort your x-axis to either your top or bottom performers. So say I want to see the top 10 performers for grade of service. And as a best practice, I just want to make this quick note that always select link date. The reason behind that is because for the dimension of linking, dimension for linking and selecting link date for this, it would mean that it covers all the dates in that particular index. By default, if you just select default, it may not return the correct results because it would just have a specific column or number of columns in the index, as opposed to selecting link date because it would have all the dates related to that index. So it would return a more accurate report. So that's just a quick note for everybody. So if I click on preview, let me just double check. Grade of service, I want to see the top 10. You can change this to top 5 or whatever the number is. So if I hit on preview, then I just have my top 10. It would be automatically sorted out to the top 10 groups for grade of service. Let me go ahead and save and exit this. So I'm pretty happy with my report. And as far as aesthetics are concerned, we can go ahead and set that for you. So by default, when you create a cube report, it would always take the column chart. So you can go ahead and change that and see the different visualizations available in eMite. So if you click on, so if you see that, look for that bar icon and it says change type. If you click on it, by default, it would be in the chart type tab. So you can go ahead and see other chart types over here. Say we want to see it in a line chart. That's how you would see it. Or if I would then change it to a bubble, or another one would be area. So those are different visualizations that are made available for you. There's so much that you can choose from. So let's just quickly go back to a column for now. And let's change some of the settings to make our report look better. So if you just hover back again to the bar icon that says chart type and you hit on style, this is where you can change some of the static settings in your cube report. So we'll cover the x-axis for today, and some of the tabs that you see like sorting, threshold, rule, and y-axis setting would be covered in the boost or the intermediate session tomorrow. So watch out for that. So for the font size, that's something that you can set. Font color as well. So by default, it's white. If I change that to a green color, I can go ahead and do so. And you can also hide the y, not the y, but the x-axis rather over here. If you put a check mark here, then you will not have the labels in your x-axis, right? Now, some of the other things that are helpful in this style tab would be data labels. So if you click on data label and just put a check mark and enable, as you can see in the background, you would have your labels there. You can also change its position by changing its rotation. By default or none, it's in horizontal. You can change that to vertical or in 45 degrees. So let's see how would that look like in a bit later. You can also change the font color of your data labels. So let's match that with the green color that I had earlier. Apply. So as you can see in the background, it changed. So let me go ahead and click on OK. But just before I do, another checkbox over here would be hide tooltip. So what is a tooltip? I'll show you in a bit. I click on OK. So as you can see, I have my data labels and my x-axis in green font, though I'm not happy with the 45-degree angle of my data label. So I will go ahead and change that later on. But this is the tooltip. So as you hover on the different bars, you see that detail or the tooltip, right? So if you feel like it's redundant because you already have your data labels enabled, you can go ahead and disable that as well or hide that. So let me go back to that setting. So this is where you can hide the tooltip. And I want to just make my data labels horizontally as well. Where's my data label? There you go. So this rotation that I selected earlier would be for the x-axis. As you can notice, you will see in the background that your x-axis changed to a horizontal rotation for the font. I can go ahead and just bring that back to 45 degree, just better. So if you're happy with that setting, then just click on OK. So those are some basic settings that you can play around with your cube reports, right? Now, we also saw just a bit earlier how to select different chart types or different visualizations, right? So one more thing that I want to show you for the different chart types would be very interesting. I want to use this, there you go, a pie chart, right? So you have your data labels. Another cool thing that you can enable actually when you use a pie chart or any chart types for that matter would be legends. So it's also in your style settings. So just over here, just go ahead and enable or put a check mark here. I will just hide the measure so we'll have a better naming convention for the labels, which is pretty cool because this is also, or this would also serve as a filter. So as you select or deselect the color, you would also notice that your chart changes, right? So that's all in your chart settings. Similar, if you would choose a 3D donut, there you go. All right, pretty interesting for some of the basic settings, and you can already do so much with your cube reports by just knowing some of this basic stuff that we have in the style options as well. All right, so I will go ahead and show you other best practices that we have for cube report. So for instance, you would want to see what's the rate of service for last week. So you can do that by just hovering onto the header, and you would see this little clock icon that says time config. So this is a built-in date picker for each of the data blocks that we have. So if you click on that, by default it would say none, and it would be the current data. But if you would want to see for last week, you can go ahead and select this and just click on OK. Then you would see that it would change, and you would also see that it would leave a breadcrumb in the header, and it would say last week. So that's one of the things that you can find very helpful in the header of your cube report. Another thing would be viewing your cube reports, if not a chart, viewing it in grid view. So if you hover onto the header again, and you will see this table icon that says grid or chart, you can click on that, and you would see your 3D donut in chart type or in grid view. And this is, or when you select the grid view, automatically you will get an additional icon for you to be able to export it to Excel, as well as hiding and showing columns for better visibility or for ease. All right. So let me just quickly go back to my pie chart or 3D donut. So another best practice that we have for cube reports, let me just go to my next page that I have prepared for you, would be linking your cube reports with different data blocks. So I mentioned earlier the time config or the date picker that we have built in our data blocks. Say you have multiple cube reports, and it would be tedious to just click on two different time configs, right? So what you can do is to just add another data block, click on the plus sign, and this time just click on date picker, and you can just select, I want to select a black header for this, and click on add. So you would then have a solo data block or a date picker outside the cube reports. And this is helpful if you have multiple cube reports and you want to have date pickers for each. And you won't have to do it individually because you already have your date picker outside of it. Now, what you just need to do here is to link this date picker to both of these cube reports. So select both transferred and abandoned percentage cube reports and link. Now, as soon as you link your date picker data block to the cube reports, this would work its magic for both reports. Say I want to see what was last week's or yesterday's, and you would notice a change in your report. So it's very, very helpful if you are tracking and monitoring your team's performance on a daily, weekly basis. So your date picker would be very, very helpful. So let's just bring this back to today. All right. or how about last week? Now, another data block that we can link your cube reports with would be a drill through. So if I click on this plus sign, which by the way would just be under the edit page drop down, as you click on add content, you will pretty much have the same thing. So let's look for a drill through. So I want a black header again, and this time I would say details. All right, so it would be a blank data block until we link your cube reports to the drill through. So I'll go ahead and do that. So look for that intertwined arrow again for link, and you would click on details, linking it to the drill through, click on link, and do the same thing for your abandoned cube report. Now, what this does is that if you click on your bars over here, it would then generate the very details of this measure. Same thing goes for this. And this, you can notice, you see it updates your drill through data block. So those are some best practices that we have for cube reports. And another one would be, since I've mentioned the advantage of using report sets as you create your cube reports, if I try to add another data block here, say I would want to add a status data block. So I'll worry about renaming it later on. So by default, it doesn't have anything because you would have to select the source of the measure. So just hover onto the header and look for the choose data source icon, which is right here. And then by default, you have other options where you can select the measure from, but by default, it would say select report. So this is where I would want to select it from some of the reports I have created that would be found in my folder. So say I want to see from this report that I have saved. So I have the top one interacting agent, but as you notice, it doesn't have the name from which this person or this queue is that has the top one interacting agents or number one interacting agents. So, and the status, since I did not rename it earlier, but that's something that we can do. So if you hover on to the A icon or the header style, click on that. I'll just change this and say top one agents, or which group is that? And then for the description style, you can either manually type it, but it's better to get it right from the cube report, from my report set, and know which queue group or queue name that is, right? So if you just click on this checkbox that you see here that says use report member, if I click on that and hit on OK, it would automatically fetch it from my cube report and from the x-axis. And since I have set that cube report to just sort it to the top one queue name, then that's help desk, then that's why it's showing here as help desk. In the event that it updates to a different group or the number would change, it would carry over in the status block because it's the source of the number or of the measure for this particular data block. So you will see that more in action tomorrow, how we can use cube reports for different status blocks, but I just wanted to give you a primer today and how that works. All right, so you might have some questions, but before we get to the question and answer portion, let me just quickly share my slides, my last few slides for today's webinar. So let me just back up a bit. All right, so all of the things that I've shared is no secret. We have a knowledge base site. So that's the URL to our Confluence site, and all of the things about eMite, out of the box dashboards, and some of the settings that I've covered would also be in our knowledge base. And this slide that you've seen just seconds ago would be our user voice portal. So if there's anything, if you have a wish list or some enhancements that you want to see in eMite, this is where we take your insights and inputs from. So please go ahead and check out our user voice portal. And if you want to check out some ongoing forums and discussions about eMite, this is the place to be. And lastly would just be our support portal. If in case you would, and I hope not, but in the event that you encounter some challenges with eMite, these are the numbers that you can take note of, and that is the email address of our support team that's ready to assist and just provide assistance with any eMite issues that you might encounter. All right, so I'll be giving the floor back to Chris for questions that we have from the participants.
Awesome. Thanks, Ria. That was really cool.
Thank you.
Just so you guys know, if you have any questions, there's a Q&A section in the Zoom webinar application. Feel free to type them in there. Ria, do you want to preview tomorrow's session for those who are registered or not registered or want to get registered while we wait for people to punch their questions into the app?
Sure, let me go ahead and give you a primer for tomorrow's session. Let me just quickly pull that up for everybody.
And while she's pulling that up, if you guys are ever curious what's going on from a training webinar standpoint with eMite, feel free to check out emite.com/webinars. That'll be always up to date with upcoming webinars, as well as have links to the recordings of previously held training webinars.
All right, so for tomorrow, we'll focus on fine-tuning the cube. So I know we have covered some basic settings on how to style or design your cube reports, but tomorrow will be more sophisticated and will be more detailed when it comes to designing your cubes. So we'll fine-tune your cube reports tomorrow, and we'll also cover more chart types. So you've seen some of the simple charts today, but for tomorrow, we'll focus on an intermediate or a more complex chart type, which is the heat map. And you'll see some cool tricks in eMite settings for cube reports wherein we can flip the axis or the X and the Y axis. So all of those would be tomorrow. And more best practices, as I've mentioned a couple of minutes ago, you've seen how we can make your cube report as a data source for your status data blocks, and you'll see more of that tomorrow. All right, so a much more exciting session or webinar for tomorrow's boost.
Awesome. Teresa actually has a question about previous eMite webinar recordings. No, Teresa, you don't actually need a login. Anybody can go to emite.com/webinars and check out previously recorded sessions. This is a new effort. And so right now, I believe the episode of Life Hacks should be up there. And then this episode will get posted later today, as will tomorrow's episode. And I think Ria's got some more in the pipeline for later in 2019 as well, which we're all excited about.
Yes, so just to give everybody a heads up, we have two themes for our webinars. So like Chris mentioned earlier, we had, I think a couple of weeks ago, we had the first ever eMite Life Hacks, wherein it would focus on different tips and tricks. So we started with wallboards for that webinar. And this is actually the first session for Datablock and Focus. The intent of the webinar is to just really zoom in and, as it said, focus on the different data blocks that we have in eMite. As you have seen in the menu earlier, we have quite a few, but not really few, but we have quite a number of data blocks. So we're starting off with cube reports, and this is in series because cube reports is quite, a vast topic. So we can't cover everything in just one webinar. So we're having it in series, but so you've seen earlier in the menu, we have status, we have gauges, drill throughs, date pickers. So we'll cover each of those data blocks charts in detail in this series or the webinar we call Datablock in Focus. All right. So do we have more questions?
Oh, that looks like that is it. So thanks everybody for joining us today, and please keep an eye on your inbox as we'll also be sending out a link to the webinar recording afterwards. All right. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you so much, guys. See you and talk to you tomorrow.